Congressman Darin LaHood was the only Illinois Republican to vote for all parts of the massive aid package Congress sent to Israel and Ukraine. He says it's a matter of national security. Our Capitol Bureau Chief Cole Hinkey is live in our Capitol newsroom. Cole, you sat down with LaHood for a one-on-one interview. What do you have to say?
Well, we spoke in depth about his vote on that aid package, and we also talked about the infighting in the Republican Party and the most recent attempt to oust Speaker Mike Johnson. Out of the 3 Republican members of Congress from Illinois, Congressman Darin LaHood was the only one to vote for both $61 billion in aid to Ukraine and $26 billion to Israel.
Listen, I don't think we ought to have a blank check when it comes to money for Ukraine or any other country. But we don't have U.S. troops on the ground. We're not spilling our blood in Ukraine.
LaHood, a member of the House Intelligence Committee, said the aid is necessary to stop a, quote, axis of evil. That includes Russia.
But make no mistake about it, Putin is a thug, he is a dictator, he is an international criminal.
China.
The country that wants to see us lose in Ukraine the most is Xi Jinping in China.
And Iran.
When they talk about death to America, that's real.
LaHood's fellow Republicans, Mike Bost and Mary Miller, did not support Ukraine aid. Meanwhile, senators were forced to vote on the aid as a package vote. But Senator Dick Durbin said he would have had questions before sending more money to Israel if he voted individually.
With provisions to guarantee that they stop the kind of warfare that hurts so many innocent people.
The aid package was one of the few major initiatives that has made it through a deadlocked Congress in months. This week, the House has been tied up by another threat to remove the Speaker, Mike Johnson. LaHood called this a waste of time.
I think it would be really dumb and stupid to go forth with the motion to vacate, and I will not support it.
LaHood also stopped short of saying the office of the president should have total immunity, a job perk that former President Donald Trump's team of lawyers is currently fighting for in the Supreme Court.
The president deserves some type of immunity, there's no doubt. Is it a blanket immunity? I don't think that's what the founding fathers initiated.
LaHood endorsed Trump leading up to the primary. He argues that the multiple trials that Trump is involved in are not a stain on his or the office's credibility, but a, quote, diversion.
My point is, most people that I talk to think that support President Trump think that is wholly inappropriate and shouldn't be happening in an election year.
Now, when I pressed LaHood on Trump's pending court cases, he said he not only thinks that they are a distraction, but he also believes that it is not an issue that the average person or average voter in the state focuses on when choosing their candidate. Reporting in Springfield, I'm Cole Hinkey, WCIA 3, your local news leader.
All right, Cole, thank you.